I now come to Jim Allister.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I very much welcome this proposal. Representing a constituency in Northern Ireland, we have had, as has been referenced, voter ID for over 20 years. I must say it works very, very well. And I think it is something that the rest of the United Kingdom could build upon and learn from. The last speaker, the member for Lancaster and Wire, said that we have a voter ID card. Yes, we do. If you haven't got a passport, if you haven't got a driving licence, you haven't got a bus pass or whatever else is on the list, you can apply to the electoral office, supply a photograph, complete a form which a councillor or an MP or a doctor can verify, and then you're issued free with a voter ID card that carries your photograph and your name. And as the member suggested, it's valuable in other regards as well. So I certainly would recommend that as a way to go in respect of these matters. This proposition adds the veterans card as the usable items of identification. And whereas this regulation applies only to GB, upon seeing the regulation, I tabled a question to the Northern Ireland Secretary, and I'm very pleased with his answer, because he has indicated to me that before further elections in Northern Ireland, he proposes to add the veterans card to the list of acceptable documents in Northern Ireland. And that is good, not just because it enhances the parity which should exist, but it affords to veterans and eases their situation when it comes to voting. And I very much welcome that. I listened with interest to the speech of the spokesperson for the Liberal Democrats. And I must say, I do not understand the aversion to voter ID. In Northern Ireland, we have it for 20 years and more because of industrial scale voter fraud, organised in the main, of course, by Sinn Féin, who literally had an army at their back to do the stealing of votes that they were engaged in. And faced with that, it is right to have a system of voter ID. But no party that isn't engaged in cheating or wanting to cheat has anything to fear from voter ID. Will you give way on that point? Yes.
Thank you. I thank the honourable member for giving way, and like him, I share a scepticism over the view of the Liberal Democrats. And the Liberal Democrat spokesman, Madam Deputy Speaker, said there were no convictions for electoral fraud in this country during 21-22, I believe, and I think that's what she said. Actually, there was a case in Eastleigh, my old constituency, and I see the Honourable Lady for Eastleigh is here, who had to complete 50 hours unpaid work for providing a false name at a polling station in Eastleigh in 2022.
And anything that we can do to diminish the opportunities for voter fraud, we should be doing. Why wouldn't we? And therefore I do not understand the reticence about it, yes?
I'm grateful to the honourable gentleman for giving way. He mentioned that he doesn't see why political parties who compete fairly should have anything to fear. I put it to him, it's not a fear of political parties, it's much more about upholding the rights of voters. And it is their interests that we need to protect, and not the interests of political parties. And that is why we are calling for the abolition of voter ID. Although I will say I fully take on board his points about the situation in Northern Ireland.
Well, I must say to the honourable lady, we are protecting voters when we protect them against voter fraud, and that's precisely what voter ID does. It is the ordinary citizen that is being protected. The citizen who wants to play by the rules, the citizen who wants to vote properly, the citizen who doesn't want to cheat, who doesn't want to impersonate. That's the person you're protecting by introducing voter ID.
Yes? I'm grateful for giving way a second time, because As I said to the Shadow Minister earlier on, the point is that the risk of being prevented from voting because of the inability to produce the relevant voter ID is much, much higher than the risk of personation, and that has been borne out by all of the evidence, all of the research, and the honourable gentleman managed to cite one particular instance in Eastleigh. And I put it to him, and I put it to the honourable gentleman for
Northampton.
I beg your pardon, from Northampton, that the single instance in Eastleigh is likely to be many times outweighed by the number of people who were prevented from voting for these requirements.
Well, I would respectfully suggest that there is probably an unknown and hidden degree of impersonation. How would you know if you can only say, well, there's only been so many people prosecuted? That doesn't mean that there's only so many people impersonating. And the way to rule it out, the way to present hurdles to it, is to have voter ID. And I really do not understand how anyone who wants a clean election, who wants to see only legitimate voters voting, only those votes counted, why anyone who's on that side of things would say, oh, we don't want to have any protections to make sure there's no voter cheating. Surely we should all want to be on the side of preventing the cheating in an election. And it really is a question. Are you on the side of making it more difficult or easier to cheat in an election? And surely we should all be on the side of making it more difficult. And therefore I do strongly defend the voter ID issue. So, returning to the core subject matter, I think it is fitting that in this week of Remembrance Day that we should be adding to the ID list the Veterans Card, and I look forward to that happening in Northern Ireland as well. But I do want to raise a point that a serving soldier sent me a message about, which also touches upon voting. And this is what he wrote. I just want to highlight a further issue, that serving members of the armed forces when serving abroad can't exercise their ability to vote due to the inefficiency of the now contracted British Forces Post Office. The length of time to request a postal vote, which is how most service people would vote, and then to send your vote means often you miss the deadline. And then he cites all the countries where servicemen are, and some can be as far away as the Falklands or Germany or Poland or in Africa. And he says, why is it that we cannot have more efficiency in terms of getting postal votes out and back to service people? And that seems to me a legitimate question. And he goes on to say, many other countries provide polling booths in their military bases or in their embassies. Why do we not do that? And I do ask that question of the Minister. Why are we not going further for service personnel who are serving abroad to ensure that they are entitled to participate and do participate in the democratic process? And I think those are important questions that need to be answered, and it's something that this House should give some attention to going forward. Thank you.
Matt Fodder.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. And it's